that we're still exploring. But at the same time, I think we all have this interim relationship with AI, where we understand that it's something with potential. We are doing new things that we've never done before with ChatGPT and other LLMs. But it's really not changed how most businesses work. So the challenge, I think, for all of us is to put ourselves in that imaginative mode and think about how many of the ways that we are doing things, whether that's my profession as a professor or any of yours, how these might be near becoming obsolete. And so with that framing, I want to start by welcoming the three guests that we have. We had a fourth guest who's had to leave because we're running late on time. Bakar was the CEO of the Pakistan Software Export Board. He's just had to leave because of scheduling conflicts. But let me start perhaps by asking all three of our guests where they think AI will hit Pakistan first. And perhaps we can start from the other side. Safwan Sahab, if you will, imagine for us a 10 to 20 year time horizon and tell us how Pakistan gets hit with AI. Thank you.
So before I answer your specific question, it took 5,000 years from the first wheel to the car. And the first car that was made in the electric car was made because the streets of London smelt bad, because the horse carriages would leave stuff there, which had to be cleaned. But the first electric car which became commercially viable was a company right across where my office is, and it's called, I think Tesla was the first real. So technologies take a long time because many things have to work together. For instance, they have to be viable for somebody to make money. There has to be an infrastructure around it. And when it comes to, I think your specific question is that in Pakistan, where will it hit us, right? So almost everything that has happened in the last 30, 40 years, I've been in Silicon Valley for 31 years. And I'm witness to history, a strange history, a different type of a history, where from networking we went to, I wasn't there for the computing world, but networking came, and then social networking. Then now I would say AI is, the big difference here is that the raw material for AI is absolutely nothing really. It's really electricity. That's the raw material. The ability to create an algorithm, those algorithms existed when I was doing research in the 90s. So there's no new algorithm. So what really is, there's a world full of problems, and there is a technology which can solve those problems, and the raw materials to apply that technology is really nothing. Because in the first phase, the LLMs are doing it. So now, when it comes to Pakistan, and I've kind of listened to a lot of talks today, a lot of talk and talks. And what I would say is that the nature of work as we know today will change. How we solve things, so bankers can think that banks run a certain way. Industrialists can think that industry runs a certain way. But AI changes the very nature of work. So how we operationalize work, it's not about AI will come and do Excel better. I don't know if Excel is needed. You understand? So now when it comes to Pakistan, I think, and this is my sort of provocative statement. Can I quote Nietzsche? There's this quote, why did I promise to do that? Those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Now, when it comes to Pakistan, I think they're not hearing the music. And I love Pakistan. The reason they're not hearing the music is because maybe it's not loud enough. And your question is, at what point will it hurt when the decibels will go above 90? I think what will happen is it will hurt the industries here in ways that they don't know yet. And the other way it will hurt is that our young people, people haven't realized one other thing, that AI is a consumer technology right now. And it is, that's why this whole bubble question comes up. The businesses are not making money, but everyone's using it, right? This is a classic situation. It's a bubble because somebody's invested in the wrong thing, but everybody's making money. So in Pakistan, the people who are getting basic education will be left behind the worst. And I think that's where it's going to hit us. And I think the nature of work for the big industries, because industries like to protect status quo. I don't think governments are relevant. This whole issue that the government somehow changes things and people start progressing, maybe it's an American in me. I think we do things in spite of government. And in Pakistan, AI will give a whole class of new people tools. So I think it's going to affect us because there are new people who will do interesting things in Pakistan. So I have an optimistic view. The old guard will be hurting. Systems will change, but new people will find ways to make money using AI. Anyone who's in an existing industry will have resistance to use AI. And I'll just use AI as like this black box that we don't know what it does. So that's what I think.
So before I move on and talk to the other guests about both the threats and opportunities in their sectors, a lot of us can, when we think of AI, think ChatGPT. But we want to think of an intuitive way to understand what is the possibility that's being unlocked. So for me, the wheel means that mobility has been unlocked, and electricity means that power has been unlocked and power transmission has been unlocked. What's the big concept of what AI enables us to do, and how should people who have nothing to do with CS or IT, but who know their sector very well, think about how to leverage it? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Do you want to take provocative statement number 2?
Go ahead.
So AI democratizes IQ. Yesterday, I met many people here, and they're all accomplished people here. Everybody is a rock star here. So I met many rock stars. They run big businesses, and I'm talking to them. Some of them talked about AI. And I said, I don't like AI, he said to me. And I said, why? He says, it makes, like anybody can do things, and you never know if it's correct and all that. So, that is the general theme. So the first thing that I would say is AI democratizes IQ. So what happens is it lifts the average up. So the person we rejected mostly because they were not good enough, they are now very good. So what happened is when I was growing up in Pakistan, I could speak English. So I had an unfair advantage over other people. And there is this socio-economic discrimination in Pakistan by your ability to speak English. In the rest of the world, you have to be tall and handsome. But in Pakistan, speaking English makes you tall and handsome. So this was a huge advantage. Now, everybody can speak English and write it well, and write it in the style of Shakespeare if they wanted. So what has it done? It moved the average up. That's the provocation. And when the average goes up, then how do you distinguish between people? Now the need for imagination has come in. I actually think that people in Pakistan where the average, not because they are bad, it's the opportunity that is missing, because opportunity is not equally distributed. There will be a dramatic change because people who don't have access to a lot of things have now got ChatGPT. And some crazy things will happen and are happening.
Okay, I'll come back and explore some of this further with you, but Monis, just to pick up on that, Safwan Sahib is saying that IQ has been democratized and the only constraint is imagination. But we've had ChatGPT now for 3 years, roughly, give or take, in a reasonably good form. And certainly for more than a year in the free version of many of these LLMs is quite good, and you can do functional work with it. But if you didn't tell me that we're sitting in 2025, and I thought about how my day has gone today, I don't really see it in my day-to-day life. except for maybe asking ChatGPT what questions to ask you. Right? So this is often sort of called, I think, when the internet was first sort of created, there's an economist, I don't want to misname who it was, but he said that the internet is showing up everywhere but in GDP numbers. And so AI is showing up everywhere but doesn't seem to be showing up in the bottom line. Can you sort of help us unpack this a little bit?
There's actually quite a bit to unpack, but I very much agree with Safwan. I'd go one step further. You know, the most expensive resource that we have is possibly intelligence, because intelligence is scarce. It takes a lot of work to get that sort of knowledge base, education. But intelligence now has been commoditized. It has been commoditized. Everybody has access to Albert Einstein in their pocket, the smartest individual who knows legal, medical, engineering, software. And I have equal access to it, and MIT PhD has equal access to it, and my Chaukidar has equal access to it in Urdu through an audio voice note, which is now phenomenal. Throughout human history, we have been through revolutions. AI is the biggest revolution that mankind has ever seen. And if we're not hearing the music, we better turn up the volume, because it is already impacting the entire world, including what's happening on the ground in Pakistan. If you look at each of these big transitions, from the agricultural revolution to the first industrial revolution, the second one, internet revolution, there's been a lot of fear about jobs going away. And if you study the data, as I have very closely, you'll find that actually jobs have always increased after these events. There's been a displacement of jobs from one area to the other. There's been a category shift, but overall there's been a lot more employment. Now, if you look at what's happening, intelligence has been commoditized, which means that AI has given less skilled people the ability to do work of highly skilled people. So that gap is increasing, where now a very low skilled person, as AI improves, can do the work of a very high skilled person. So what happens? Your expensive resources are no longer needed, and now you can have very cheap resources do the work of expensive resources. And Pakistan has 2 million uneducated, unskilled people entering the workforce every year that we do not have any hope of educating. But now these people, powered with AI, are those very low-skilled people who can now perform the work of very high-skilled people. So we have this tremendous asset. This liability of 2 million people is going to be a tremendous asset for us if we can train them and upskill them on AI. They will not only serve us in this country, but they'll serve the whole world, because we're cheaper than low-skilled resources almost anywhere in the world. AI, as we know it, we talk about ChatGPT, and interesting, you're using ChatGPT, but there's so much more going on behind the scenes. There are these LLMs, these large language models, which power these chats that we're playing with. Businesses are using this to innovate, to do things much faster, to do things a lot more efficiently. We're seeing Chinese open source models that are now dominating software. American software firms aren't going for OpenAI, which is a maker of ChatGPT, because they don't trust it. They're using Chinese open source models. We have the ability to bring those open source models here, but we aren't hearing the music. We should be investing in AI infrastructure. We should be investing in data centers. We should be having GPUs in this country. We should be training our own models, because we have a plethora of information in this country that we thought we could never use because it was unstructured. Well, now we can. And not only can we use it, but the masses can be trained to use that information and create something very productive for the economy. So I'm very, very optimistic, but I think we need to listen to the music, because it's very loud everywhere else. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, the volume is very low, it's down.
So there are a few things to unpack there. To repeat what you just said. You said that you now have an Einstein in your pocket, right? At the same time, you're saying that if we skill our workforce up, that they have a path to being good users of AI. Why do we need their intelligence to interface with AI when AI itself is Einstein plus or whatever it is, right? So what I want to understand from you is, what does the future job market look like where everyone has an Einstein? Then where does my intellect come in? Let's start there.
That's a great point. I think we have this leap of faith where, AI isn't really working, it doesn't work. to all of a sudden AI is doing everything and we don't need human beings because AI has automated everything. So I think that's a very extreme approach, this AGI thing that we think is the end goal, but probably really isn't. Human beings will always be needed to drive these tools in various ways, but the skill level of those human beings is going to go down. So, while we can say that AI will probably do a lot of the things, yes, it can do a lot of the things that I do. For example, if I need to write a social media post in good English, I need to hire a LUMS MBA to do it properly. I don't need to anymore. I need to hire a creative person who can speak in Urdu, has a creative mindset, can speak in Urdu and create beautiful English like a McKinsey employee. So human beings will always be needed at some stage. The skill level will go down, and we have an abundance of skill in this country.
Okay.
I'm sorry, labor in this country.
Safwan sir, maybe later when I come back to you, we'll pick this theme up again because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me that we have a system that is able to expand our intelligence, but still requires some minimal level of intelligence. I mean, I would think it would be the other way around, where AI can't do the very high-end stuff, perhaps, but surely the easiest intelligence stuff would be taken care of. But Fatima, if I can come to you now, I have spoken to a few Pakistani firms about AI, and like me, everyone feels completely lost. You've worked on rolling out education reforms in various countries, solutions. All right, solutions, not reforms. You can also tell us what the difference there is. But when we are thinking as an economy of how to adopt AI better and faster than our peer countries today, can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned in your career about how adoption of of innovation sort of might filter through the economy?
Thank you. And thank you, PBC, for this kind invitation as well. As my fellow panelists have also spoken about, that what is actually happening and how are we translating it in terms of our understanding as business leaders, policy makers, etc. It is extremely important to understand what is happening. And we are, ladies and gentlemen, I believe, in the most transformative point as far as at least our known history is concerned. Economies around the world and some of the countries that we serve right now as an organization, we're across 4 continents, so we have access and a bit of understanding in terms of how certain economies are moving. And the conversation is, where are they going to be in terms of economic sustainability, economic prosperity, and growth by 2035, and leveraging on the AI revolution. Now, AI itself is also at an inflection point. We have to understand that. It's not just AI independently. To the best of my knowledge, what is happening is it's converging with quantum computing, with humanoid robotics, with space exploration as well. So with the convergence of all of these elements, you also have the meta trends that have emerged, whether it is AI through health, the science of longevity, the science of education being in virtual realities, which is already happening in some of the Middle Eastern countries. Some of our clients who are in the Middle East, the universities over there are upgrading the way, the platforms and the tools that they're providing to their next generation of learning, or the next generation of the workforce as well. That's one example. Health, the biotechnology transformation that is taking place. So all of this wraps up into how we are raising our children, how we are living our lives, how we're managing our businesses, as well as governing our nations. And fundamentally, it has an impact on where are we investing at this point in time. Because the convergence of all of these elements, I mean, case in point, we talked about digital payments. Monis, you mentioned that, and as well as Safwan. Digital payments is cross-sector, as we all know. It is the telecoms working with the banks, working with the retail industry, and of course the infrastructure that is required. Never before has that, and that is unprecedented itself, because you look at the governance framework around it. Governance frameworks themselves are changing. They're forced to change. And the most important, of course, is what has been touched upon as well, is the human capital development. The reskilling, and those who will be left without jobs are not the ones who have not reskilled. They are the ones who have not adopted and adapted to AI fundamentally in their current jobs, whether they're business leaders or whether they're tech professionals in the education sector, cross-industry. So I think it is extremely important for us to recognize that the game changer requires infrastructure development. It is not just about AI skill building, which is one of the most important, especially for a country like Pakistan, where we are rich in terms of human capital. We just need to give them platforms, opportunities for a future forward economy. The way I see it, when you link it up to what's happening in Pakistan, if I may, is five-pronged. One, of course, you have the governance in terms of the vision. You look at markets like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, even if they say, yes, they're smaller in terms of population, but they have a plan, they're working on it. They've already included that in terms of their national AI policy. We have a national AI policy, I must admit, but it has to go into more technical elements of what is the infrastructure that is required. One, from a computing perspective, two, from a data perspective. At this point in time, on a daily basis, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is 25, I think, trillion bytes of data that are being processed today, every single day. And that is leapfrogging over the next 20, in the next 10 years. We need data centers to process it. The minute you have data centers, you're looking at energy. You're looking at water, because a hyperscaler, for example, runs, I think, on 130, 140 megabytes. That's a hyperscaler. You need water, gallons of water to cool it down as well, but also run it. The concept of GPUs, you mentioned that. Absolutely. That's the infrastructure and networks and data centers that Pakistan should be investing in. And of course, human capital development. So it is not in isolation. It is not about just pockets of AI or technology transformation that we have to work with. That is what these economies have figured it out. They have a 10 to 15-year roadmap, and they're saying, how is the infrastructure and the governance around it enabling us to fast forward in terms of emerging as a services-based organization and going towards more high-cost premium AI-based services. Thank you.
Okay, so great. So far when I've asked why hasn't AI been really rolled out, one thing you've just said is we lack infrastructure and perhaps direction. What you said about AI being adopted at the university level is very well taken, and there's demonstration value to a government leading the adoption of a new technology. I understand. But Safwan, Asad, back to you, because Monis also said something about GPUs, and Fatma's talked about infrastructure. My understanding, I'm an economist, never studied computer science beyond the O level. So my understanding is that you need those things, you need the data centers, and you need to invest in your GPU farms and your energy and so on for one of two reasons. Either because you're trying to compete on building better AI, whatever it is, solutions, LLMs or whatever else, or two, because there is something that is where there are security concerns and you want to home shore certain technologies. But if I want to use an LLM, I want to get on to Claude or Gemini or whatever, and then if I don't like the Western ones, I can go to DeepSeek. I don't really need to reinvent the wheel. You said earlier that it's about people and not governments. And then when I look at the in any ecosystem in Pakistan, whether it's education or the corporate sector or manufacturing, whatever, I just don't see enough AI yet. What do you think the bottleneck is?
It's an astute point. So the conventional wisdom is that we need to own the infrastructure, right? So Apple has phone that is used by 2 billion people. Has it stopped the people of India from progressing? They may have other phones, but you don't have to. Building a phone doesn't change your economy. And now as you go, let's extend this argument, because maybe there is another provocation that needs to be addressed here, and I have two or three that I want to get into. I actually think that businesses like OpenAI, Google, Meta, and Meta doesn't use NVIDIA's chips, they're using Google's chips. There was a big thing in the stock market today. They are in a battle for supremacy in this particular AI domain, right? They're in the battle of supremacy. They're in a different battle. I think nations don't need to start thinking like that. This whole idea, I think, stems from this prevailing belief of a conventional society that exclusive access to information is the source of power. That my information is exclusive and mine alone. And this is how the world, a ruling class rules another class. And I'm not talking about government alone. It could be, when we saw in the early stock market days, Renaissance technologies came in. They had faster fiber to get what happened, right? Somebody has a Bloomberg terminal, somebody doesn't have it. So exclusive access to information was a source of power. And that is how people have built power centers. Google had exclusive access to billions of people's of information. And how did they monetize it? They sold us to ad companies, right? We get very excited, great company. What was it? It was a brain manipulation, right? Same thing with Meta. I'm not saying it in a negative way, but it's so commonsensical to think of these things. Now it comes, should Pakistan invest $100 billion in GPUs? Rubbish. Pakistan should piggyback parasitically on everything that's out there. Exclusive access to information, be damned. The entire nation has given it to Facebook anyway, or to Google. And, the bankers sitting here, but even their world is changing and they know it. They had to agree at a point that data centers is where our servers should reside, right? And the world is changing. So I just wanted to make a point. When an existential threat, what Fatima said was brilliant, that quantum computing is about to arrive, right? It may be 10 years away. So this AI that I see today is going to be so this whole idea of mega trends is also there. So I just wanted to make a point that we can piggyback parasitically on this wave. We don't need to build everything. But what we must do is we must let people use these tools that are there. I almost would like to say, and it may sound like sci-fi, we talk about performance-enhancing drugs, and really this is performance enhancement. That's what AI is. And we should put up 10,000 people, and we should not tell our kids that go read Tolstoy, because your brain is going to go to mush if you don't read Tolstoy on paper. I read Tolstoy on paper and maybe it made me better, but now the wiring of the brain is different. What will change is how we are wired.
So, I'm struggling here because what I want...
The idea was to make you struggle.
Great. What I want out of, especially the two of you, is who work in this full time, is some sense of what it will take for the next big AI company to come out of Pakistan and not the UK and not India or not Nepal, right? How does a country, any country, give itself the best chance of riding this wave that we all know is coming? Is it something about the culture of democratizing how corporations are run, so opportunities are being sort of experimented with? Is it something about the legal structure or regulations? You've already said that we don't need a large amount of infrastructure, and I like Monis' response to this. But is there something, what's the secret sauce here?
Still on me then, I think the biggest change that will happen is the way our ambitions will change. And what I mean is today our aspiration is a certain type, that we will do this or we will do that in life. But when so much of our time will be released, which is happening, I run a company and many people around me, we have so much time to do other things now because so much of what we used to worry about, of analysis or deep analysis, etc., AI can do, right? And as a company, we've adopted it. And many people that I know, they're doing it that way. We've become more productive. And we don't know what to do with our time. This is actually happening right now for a lot of people who are enhanced by AI. So that's one thing. What was the other part of your question? So that's one thing that's happening right now. You had some second part to the question.
So Fatima wanted to respond, and then I'll
Please
come
go
to
ahead.
Monis.
I've taken too much time.
I just want to say that one of the challenges that technology companies or technology-related companies have, which is something that goes back to infrastructure. So while you have data centers, it's also about consistent supply of energy and the internet connectivity, where the telecoms are working towards building that infrastructure, connecting to different the cables that are being laid and the conversations that are happening with other countries around the world. But if it's not fast enough, it's not reliable, it's not accessible and affordable, then it stops that growth that can take place because, again, I connected back to the human capital resource base that this country has. And that is where we can really fast forward that conversation. So what's happening is the larger organization or more established or mature organizations are running with it because perhaps they have access to, better access to international markets in terms of their maturity, presence, etc. But the smaller entrepreneurial startups or small and medium-sized enterprise, they are also serving different parts of the world. And they're great opportunities. The opportunity is there, the talent is there, but we need this infrastructure for continuity and consistency. What happens is that the minute the quality slips, you've lost that contract. We know that. We work with companies in the North American market, in the African market, and Middle Eastern. The minute there is a delay and the KPIs that are set in terms of, they don't care if you're in Pakistan. They're saying this was contractually obligated by you. And of course, the legal framework is much more stringent. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that how are we enabling this wave of building, as you say, the next tech company. And I just want to also highlight that you've talked about piggybacking. Yes, it is important. Working and collaborating with the hyperscalers, whether it's Google or NVIDIA or any other organization. But that has its own challenges, from data residency to data privacy to data protection as well. And we need to then formulate rules and laws that govern, which give the comfort level and the trust to those that you're working with. Because you very rightly pointed out in my mind, it's about the corporations, organizations. What is the conversation they're having? Not so much the governments. So that's my point of view on that.
All right. So, Monis, I want to come to you now. And in this conversation about whether we need the actual infrastructure, more import substitution, or whether we want to sort of piggyback on what already exists worldwide, I suppose that it's a question of the sensitivity of the data. So I can imagine why banking, for example, might want to be home-shored, or why people's mobility solutions, where we don't want other countries to track where our people are going, that I can see a privacy argument for. But there's no privacy argument for my job. And I can, if I'm using AI to teach a class, I don't care whether the server is in California or Delhi or Lahore. There's nothing really confidential about it. And I think if we really think about it, there's a lot of, we can push back against the argument that we need to home-shore everything. But you said we need to build our GPUs. So pick up from there and walk us through this, please.
Yeah, okay. So I think the reality is both can coexist. We should be using as much AI as we can. We should be using Chinese models, US models, wherever we can get access to it, our people should be using it. However, 6 out of the top 10 VPN companies in the world are owned by Israeli companies. This is a fact. You can go on the internet And you can see this. Why is that the case? Because there's a lot of data that's going through. When you look at the databases of Google and Meta, absolutely, there are CIA intercepts, there are intercepts by other intelligence agencies. I'm not trying to promote a conspiracy theory. These are facts. The data is out there. WhatsApp knows more about our people in Pakistan than we do. And now when you have AI on the back of that, and you can contextualize those conversations and draw very, very deep insights from the data instead of having to read every single chat, it's a tremendously powerful asset. Now, there are some use cases that do require localization. One is there's confidential data in the government. I remember, I've been in and out of Islamabad so many times, and there's a document that's very it is confidential, and it's been highlighted as such, and then I'm told to email it to this address, which happens to be a Gmail address. And you take all of the securities, we lock the doors, we do everything, and then we say, here's a Gmail or a Hotmail address, iske aap isko email karne, right? And that's where the vulnerability exists. So there's a lot of government use cases that we need to implement in this country that have very sensitive data. Payment use cases are also very, very important. So we definitely need to, I'm not saying create our own foundational model. We should never try to compete with OpenAI and Google and creating our own, version of ChatGPT. We'll never be able to do it. We don't have the resources to do it. However, we should be fine-tuning our data on top of existing open source models like Quen and DeepSeek and others, so that we can keep the data local. One, there is a security concern, but more importantly, we have about 65 million people in the labor force. We have the unprecedented opportunity to uplift these people into this new knowledge economy. But guess what? These AI use cases are not localized. When you try to make these AI tools speak Urdu, they start speaking Hindi. When you start to ask them to speak audio Urdu, there's a strong accent. They don't understand our information, our data. Why not? Because we're not important. So we should be fine-tuning our own models for our own use cases, for the own information that we have locked up in the drawers and the cabinets inside the ministries, and that needs to happen on local infrastructure. So wherever you are in the world, you're finding out whichever hyperscaler has the most GPUs is all of a sudden making a lot of money. In Pakistan, we need to have data centers. We need to allow our corporations to fine-tune their models, to tweak the models, to localize them, so that we can help our people and we can uplift our people. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, I want to be greedy and keep the panel to myself, but I've been told to open up and share them with the audience for questions and answers. Questions, really.
Yeah, I have a question.
Can we get a mic there?
A lot of talk about LLM, but isn't that a bit of an overkill as far as businesses are concerned? I mean, let's say if I want to introduce AI into HR department, does the AI need to know the intricacies of a jet engine? No. And why hasn't that happened? I mean, that would make it cheaper and more efficient and more specialized, perhaps. Maybe a small LM or whatever you want to call it. Why doesn't that happen?
Let me collect a few before Salman Sab.
I use this artificial intelligence at times, but I'm not very certain about the honesty, the truth, or the sanity of the information that I'm getting. I checked about a certain religion, and I put it in and said, tell me more about this religion or whatever. It gave me a totally false answer. Then I went to Google and I put the same thing over there, and the documents that came up gave me a very different perspective. So yes, you have this AI engines, you have DeepSeek, you have ChatGPT, and you put it over there. How can you be certain that the information you're getting is worth the information, is a useful information?
So I will collect one more question here, and then, so we have a small language model question, hallucination question, and please go ahead.
Or maybe the con of AI and technology revolution that is taking place. Some of the publications that you read as well, they're saying, so this is the positives of what is happening and how the transformation, but these are the negatives that we have to be aware of. For example, another extension of that is just basic human values like compassion and just empathy that is required, the concept of human intuition. How does that play a role in terms of if the data, the data is running, I'm just linking it up to what Bajwa Saab was also saying, is कि जब data centers हैं, the data that is going to be running, there is some element of productive analysis that is required across all sectors, in agri-tech, in agriculture, in health, for education, name it, across sector. So what is happening is that you need that data, and that data is run by algorithms, and there has to be a sort of a governance framework which will enable, you know, the reliability of the information. And that is what is evolving at this point in time. The other point that I just want to highlight is we have to keep in view that the advent of AI for economic prosperity has to be built on a vision and a policy which is, what do we want to do? What are the areas that we want to focus on? If I talk about just Pakistan, are we focusing on food? Are we focusing on energy? Are we focusing on education, health? What is our primary focus? And with that, in 10 years' time, how can we leverage on the enabling technologies, whether it is quantum computing, whether it is AI, that will drive that? And what is Pakistan not doing? And then you build the infrastructure.
So, Fatima, I think our hosts are getting impatient with the time, or rather, we're going over time. So let me, in wrapping this up, and I'm sure that I know I've got 5 questions on my paper. There must be more in the room. If I can ask each of you, starting with Fatima now, what are 1 or 2 really pressing things that you want to see the government do in the next year or 2? What's your wish list for Pakistan's adoption of AI? And we'll end there.
First is to ensure that we have a governing AI policy, which is demonstrating the how, or aligning to the how part, and how the private sector can enable it. 2, extremely important is invest in human capital development, digital literacy.
Okay, great. I said 2. Right? Monis Saab.
Yeah, so I'm just going to try to weave the answer of Atif Saab and Almas Saab's question into my final point, because I think they're all very interrelated. So the way AI works is, these LLMs have crawled all the knowledge on the internet, everything, right? And their weights and their sort of probability. So basically, you are getting probabilistic information based on everything that's been crawled. Now, these hallucinations have gotten much less over time. If you see what it was before and how it is now on GPT 5.1, they're almost gone. They're still there. But on top of this, there's a layer that's called the guardrail that the AI firms implement themselves. They say, well, if you ask about Israel, make sure you don't say this. If you ask about any case, they've got a guardrail around it. Now, who controls that guardrail? The guardrail is controlled by the company. And this is why, again, we should have our own guardrails around information as well, because there are various things that we would like to guardrail against. And it comes back to now localized data, having a data center where we can train our local information, both from a security standpoint and localized to the needs and the data of our users. Where does that data come from? We don't have the luxury of having data points from the places that you can acquire it from in China, for example. However, we have lots of unstructured data. We have lots of human beings. The fastest growing profession in the world, we were speaking about this earlier, are these people called data labelers. Hundreds of thousands of people have been hired with expertise who review what the LLM says, they fix it, and it gets rolled back and the LLMs improve. We should be having data labelers on our own information to localize that information and improve it. So I think the request from the government, have a data center locally, give us lots of H100s, Shahzad Saab's here, I know he's doing some work on that, and let our corporations and enterprises and our banks start to play with it and try to train our own local models and tweak them for the benefit of our people. We have a colonial mindset that, well, if it's already happening in the West, then why should we need to do it? Let's just use Gmail. And there's a case for that as well, by the way.
Safwan sir, we'll let you have the last word.
I think if the government was listening to me, I would have a very simple message for them, that AI is a new utility. Just like you are measured on giving people food or making sure there's food or fuel in the society or electricity or gas, there is a new utility and it's called AI. And everyone in this country, from the local level to any sector, that you need to start leveraging it, and we can make these 5 things. You should use it for education, you should use it for something else, but that's getting into the details. First, understand it is an existential threat and for societies, because countries don't die. Countries just, Urdu ka word hai, sarti hain. They just keep eroding. And AI can actually make Pakistan forget actually you can become prosperous if you use AI. Let's become an AI country. So make it a utility and declare it as one.
Great. I'm sure many of you have open-ended questions after this conversation, as do I. But please join me in thanking a wonderful panel for provoking those questions.